Hi, everyone. Hi. So just a couple of housekeeping before we get started. I'm really excited about this training. I promise it will not be death by PowerPoint. I promise, okay? If anybody needs to use the bathroom or turn off your cells, it would be greatly appreciated, just so we have smooth sailing. Additionally, if anybody has a question, I have left Q&A time at the end, so jot them down or just keep them there and we will answer them. If at any point past the 15 minutes for Q&A you have additional questions, I myself will be extremely happy to answer them via email or any way that's convenient for you guys, okay? The entire purpose is for you guys to learn. I've been in your shoes actually twice. So a little bit about me. My name is Zeahlot Lopez, and fun fact, my name is actually the only one in the entire world. So it actually stems from the biblical term zealot, right? You guys have heard that? But mine has an H for hope. My mother was 3 months pregnant with me, and she was told to have an abortion because I was going to have Down syndrome. Yeah, and my parents chose not to, and hence why this is my passion and purpose. Every single day I wake up, and I'm uberly excited to be a therapist and to see people in my practice, and then just to do things like this. So that's a bit about me. I'm actually dually licensed. I'm one of only 5 Latinx Latinas in the state of California that has 2 licenses. So I did that whole 3,000 run twice. Wow. And each exam I failed once. And I'm still here. So I'm here to tell you it's doable, okay? And on top of that, I was the only one within my cohort in Mount St. Mary's that was willing to pay to work for free. So give me a holler if you know what it's like to do that. That's right. Exactly. So I hear you. Trust me, I do. And it's beyond worth it. This work is so priceless. I think that if the world was perfect, a lot of us would still do it for free. It's that awesome. So I'm here as a testimony to tell you that, all right? Okay, so as we start today, I have the pleasure of presenting to you guys exploring the joys of working with Latinx community as a mental health professional. So the title is really important because I could have chosen anything else, right? I could have chosen the clinical challenges or, the adversaries or whatnot. That's not where we're going with this. We're going to keep it real, we're going to keep it transparent, but also positive. What can we do? The biggest question I get as a Latina, a year-round tan, is somebody as a colleague that is not, and whispers in my ear and says, "Can I serve the Latinx population?" And the answer is yes, of course. So we're going to learn a bit of tools today, have some fun, and discuss really important topics concerning to this. So to begin, I like to establish what our goals are on anything, whatever the conversation may be, for us to be on the same track. So today we're going to facilitate an experimental workshop to mental health professionals, such as yourself, providing services to the Latinx population with the intent of increasing the following. So these are the most important points. Awareness of challenges, experience as a Latinx individual, couple, or family. And here's the best part. If anybody wants these slides and the resources that are hyperlinked, all you have to do is click. We'll go ahead and have a slide where you can text your email, and it'll come right through, and we'll email it to you. Saves you time. Don't take notes if you don't want to. That's right. Better understand topics of concern in the Latinx community, such as racial issues, systemic aggressions, assimilation, immigration, microaggressions, identification for Latinx individuals, as well as cultural components. And there's so much more, but we only have so much time today, right? Highlight the need and capacity for mental health services and resources. As you know, even this center, we're extremely grateful to have centers such as this because there's not enough of them out there in Southern California. I was actually at Phillips Graduate Institute, and it's very similar in that there's not much profit there, if any. It's nonprofits, right, that are just barely making it off the gratefulness and the work of others in the mental health profession, as well as mindfulness of cultural stigma and shame associated with allocating mental health services to the Latinx population. So, for those of you in the future that are looking for CSU descriptions, meaning once you're licensed or you're looking to renew any of that education, these would be the components and what we're going to go over today. So we're going to identify and describe clinical challenges of providing mental health services to Latinx clients. What are those, right? What could be something that comes up? Describe clinical interventions, which may help in treating Latinx clients. So what modalities, what skills, what tools do we need and have already? Describe aspects of clinical attention when treating Latinx families, couples, and individual modalities, because they are similar but different at the same time. So let's connect. For those of you that don't want to take notes, if you literally just text Do That Therapy to that number, we can go ahead and get those to you right away with the links and resources. So the fastest way to do that is actually to take a photo of it, and then you're welcome to do that at any point. Yeah, easy, right? Technology. I love it. Mm-hmm. All right, you good? Okay. So, I like to start with being personal. So a little bit about me. I've actually been licensed as an LMFT. My anniversary will be this December. So I'll actually get to start supervising. And I know a lot of you are like, whoa, like, you know, it's only been 2 years. Yeah, it's only been 2 years, but I see the struggle since like 2011. Like, it was a while to get both of those. So here's my trajectory. I went to Mount St. Mary's, and before then, if you guys want to know, I was a barber for 7 years at Floyd's Barber Shop.
That's a therapist right there.
That's a therapist. Your bartender, your hairdresser, and your therapist all do the same thing. And then one day it clicked in my head, and I said, I'm not getting paid for this, but I'm listening to their mama drama or other things that are just kind of coming up, right? I had men that I would see every 2 weeks, and they would just tell me, I have a wife, I have a girlfriend, and I have a little fun on the side too. And I said, okay. There was no judgment there. And that's when I knew I loved hearing their story, why they were doing what they're doing. And I knew that this was the passionate work that I wanted to do. And it was just kind of that easy transition for me. I also worked doing hair and bridal work for many, many years, and that's what actually paid for my education. I am 2% of the Latinas in the United States. I am debt-free and have no loans, no debt from school. So I worked 3 jobs to get through school to be here today debt-free. It's possible. Trust, it is, and that's why this is so important to teach, right, like where someone comes from. So I also did the trajectory of the LPCC. Why did I do both? I did both for several reasons, but one is if I ever chose to leave California, I would have more options available to me. The LMFT has been here on the West Coast for so many years. The LPCC has been on the East Coast for years. And the difference there is that when we flip them, they're the stepchild. If you look at the numbers of getting licensed of LPCC in the state of California, it's still quite small as compared to the LMFT. If you take the LPCC in different states, they're open to hospital settings, clinical settings. They just have other opportunities that I don't have here in California. So if one day I hee-ho out of here, I have that. If anybody's interested in that duality of licensure, please come talk to me and I can tell you my journey and little tips and tricks that I did for that. I did have to sit for 2 different licensing exams, and that's where this comes into play. This is my Latinx family here. And fun fact, someone's mustache is actually real. Someone's, it's not mine, right? So here, I do have a mom. I have a dad right here. We're celebrating my father's, I'm going to say his 60th birthday, moi. Then we have my sibling, my cousin, and my uncle. Some are missing. I have an older sister, and then I have other family members. But I bring this into the room because I'll share this. One of the most influential people of my entire life while being a therapist and clinician has been Jose Luis Flores. He is the godfather of Latino family therapy in California. He's amazing. And the most important thing he ever said to me, he looked at me, he said, Z, may you never forget that when you see someone in that room, you see an entire family. And we are family systems 100%. I am a firm believer in that, and I'm open to other modalities too, right? It's just kind of intertwining them as needed. But when working with the Latinx population, including EVPs, there's a couple that work best, which include CBT, trauma-focused CBT, family systems, and narrative. Those are the 3 main ones that I will use in working with them and also taking the cultural components into consideration. So the joys. So what is fun about working with Latinx clients? And in a little bit I'll describe the term Latinx. So here's what's fun, professional growth. I have to tell you, working with my gente, my people, has been tough and fun and giving and everything yucky, yummy, and great at the same time, if I'm really honest. Why? Because it's a lot of work. There's layers and layers and layers of needs there where sometimes you don't even know where to start. And I think that's most humans. It's just the cultural components add to it, right? So the endless humor. I have to tell you, there's not one day that I'm not in session with a Latinx individual just cracking up at the stuff they tell me or what comes up for them. And I think, once again, that's a lot of our clients that we have and that we see. I firmly believe that before we meet the client, they choose us and we choose them. It's the energy we bring into that room. So if you're open and your curiosity is there, you will breed a whole tribe of just people that want to work with you that are going to heal mutually there. Empowering lives. I have to tell you that I actually have in here, based on research that we did, that there is a lack of resources for the Latinx population. I get really excited when I see another clinician that is willing to see a Latinx individual because there's not enough to go around. There really isn't. We'll look at those facts in a little bit. Role modeling. Role modeling to other clinicians and being willing to see Latinx individuals is huge. It's saying, hey, I'm open for this task. I'm ready to rumble in the room. Let's get it. And then they look at you and they say, wow, they're doing it. Maybe I can do it. It's being that template for others to see that along the way. I remember the first time I ever spoke about getting out of school debt-free. They looked at me like I was from Mars. They said, how'd you do it? And when I told them, they're like, that's doable. And I said, yeah, it is. Depends how bad you want it, right? That's why we're here learning this. Culture immersion. You definitely will get your toes in the water with the culture. Learning a new language. This one's a hit or miss, but definitely even when I see millennials, I learn new words every day. And I'm 32, and I'm just like, what? Like, what does that mean? Like, clout. Does that mean fame? Is that what that is? And then they tell me, right? So when you see Latinx individuals, it's important to understand that some may speak Portuguese, some may speak French, some may speak Spanish. And normally people think, oh, well, they speak Spanish, but it's important just to ask, what language do you use at home, or what language do your parents speak? Sometimes it might even be dialect, because you will have individuals from Central America and Southern America that speak indigenous languages, not even Spanish, English, French, or Portuguese. Change. This is what we want, just like Obama says. It's the change we want to see in the world. What change do we want to see in others? What influence do we want to give them, right? Bless you. So the change that I personally want to make is this, and I'll share it. It sits with some people and maybe not with others, but here I am. I was fighting with my mom on vacation in Miami, and we're just going at it verbally. And out of nowhere, my mom just screams. She says, what do you want from me, right? And this is a Latina mom. Like, I'm in for it, right? Like, I'm really going to get it. And I look at her with tears running down my eyes, and I say, you know what I want, Mom? I want you to die. And she's like, oh, of course. I go, I want you to die much more healed than wounded. That's all I want for you for the rest of my life. I could spoil you with manis and petties and taking you to lunch, but that's not going to solve anything. That's truly what I want for you. Change the game. Guess what? After that, we started going to family therapy. We started going twice a month, and it changed. I am literally living what I'm telling you. It's not easy, and we go. I invest in that instead of shoes. So therapy, I literally eat it, breathe it, live it. I'm here to tell you it's an example. It's possible. Family therapy is a thing. So, terms of clinical consideration. This is really important. This is something that I get asked a lot from a lot of my clinicians that are non-Latinx. So what is Latinx? What is Latino, Hispanic, Latin, any of that, and what is the difference? This is what it is. The definition that we got is being from all parts of the globe, as the vast majority of Latin accent individuals come from Latin America, Central America, and Northern America. So it's anybody that agrees that they come from that origin of Latin or Spanish blood. It may be a mix, and there's all kinds of different terms, but just knowing if they identify as such, that that's their identity. That's just how they're going to be labeled. So instead of having them check off a box, what I do is I ask, how do you self-identify? And I've gotten all kinds of answers. Afro-Latino, I'm not Latino, I'm Hispanic. Okay, that's fine. Whatever it is you want to do, rock it out, let me know, and I'll go from there. It's being open. Latinidad. It's a Spanish language term that refers to the various attributes shared by Latin American people and their descendants without reducing those similarities to any single essential trait. So here's something that's really cool to know. Everyone in the room has a beautiful multicultural ray of melanin. Any one of you could be Latino in here, or Latina, or Latinx. It ranges from beautiful chocolate melanin to porcelain fair skin. Eye color, same thing. You would never know. My niece has beautiful clear eyes and blonde hair. My brother-in-law from Mexico has beautiful blue eyes and blonde hair. Like, he's a towhead, for sure. Yeah. So it's important just to know there's a variety, right? So always ask.
That includes Asians, too.
That's right. Absolutely. So, familismo, family-orientated. What it means is, in general, Latinos are very collective. It's the family goes first. So let's say if you see a child, any of you see minors, see children in treatment? Yeah. So what dad says goes. And then you trickle down from there. And if there's somebody who's above dad, like the matriarch, like grandma, and grandma's still living and lives in the home, what she says goes. So if the little one gets a chocolate cupcake cake before dinner, it's happening. That's it. So you kind of just gotta rock with it and meet them in the middle. What is appropriate for that family? Putting family first. It is a staple to the culture and the people. Additionally, visitando. Here's what's really given positive results with non-Latinx clinicians providing therapy to Latinx. It's the idea that, yes, it's clinical in its nature and we have to diagnose, but it's really just kind of like that one-on-one like conversation that you have with someone. So what I mean by that is a lot of us like to take notes in session, but with Latinos, they just like that one-on-one attention. Because other than that, they won't have it. You are literally possibly their first experience with someone actually listening to them. It's a beautiful thing. So in taking familiarismo in consideration, you want to have that one-on-one conversation. So if you can, take notes up here as best as possible or take less of them on paper. So it's not so much clinical like a doctor, right? They already have that at the clinic where the doctor just takes notes and says, okay, what do you need? Medication? All right, see you later in 5 minutes, right? You're building a relationship with them. They want to feel that same comadre feeling, which is like that family female friend. That's what they want. So dichos. This one's a really fun one. So dichos are kind of like proverbs or sayings or something that comes up in the culture very frequently. You don't have to know them. More than anything, just be familiar that something might click with them. So is there anyone in the room by chance that does speak Spanish? So we have one. How about Portuguese, Portuguese? Anyone? Okay. So in both those cultures, what I've done is taken an entire list of them and try and understand them just a little bit more, translated to English. Kind of like the saying, anybody familiar with you can't lead a horse to water, or you can lead them to water, but you can't force them to drink? We have the same thing in Spanish. So they'll say that. And here's the greatest part. I'll share with you transparently that my therapist is Jewish and a male, does not speak Spanish. And all the time in session, I'll bring up a saying in Spanish and I'll translate it for him and I'll tell him and he goes, oh, that makes super sense. Like we have that in Hebrew too. It's just that human to human connection that we have. And that's something that you can do like, well, what about that is important for me to understand? I don't speak Spanish, I don't speak Portuguese or X, fill in, language here. But what about that is important for us to grow our relationship therapeutically? It's that key question. I'm interested, I want to know. Lead me there. So questions to ask yourself as a provider of mental health. Here's what I've learned over the years of doing trainings. What are we getting wrong? What are we not asking here? This is with any culture, just particularly today we're going over Latinx though. What do we get wrong? What are we not asking? These are the things we're going over. I'm sorry, you're right. I assumed that your mom and dad raised you. This is why I actually use the word caretakers. I will never use the word parents because maybe in the Latinx culture they think that it's a mom and dad. Sometimes it's auntie, sometimes it's grandma, or mom and dad. There's a lot of movement there in the culture where they won't necessarily tell you, actually, I was raised by 2 moms. Because in the culture, they don't want to tell people that. There's still that stigma around it. What is missing? One of the biggest things that I love to do, and I kind of heard that here in the training, which is great, is check in, check out. I do it with little ones too. It's what was the high point of your day and what was the low point of your day. So in session with Latinos, what I'll do is, hey, listen, so we went over this, this, and this. You did some great work today, but that's just my tidbits from what went on. What do you think was the best part of session today? What'd you take from it, right? What didn't work for you? Oh, Z, it was really hot in here. You didn't have the fan today. Sorry, let me get that for you next time. Z, you didn't have enough candy. What is going on? That's what they look forward to at the end of session, and that's important. Food and culture. Always keep that in mind with Latino clients. You're visiting the home, even if it's in a little tiny room or in the home that you're going to home-based therapy, it's always a familiar visit. That's what they want to know, is a human-to-human connection. What do we need? This is a huge one. What do we need? What is missing? So after this, we'll go over an entire list of what gets in the way of actually providing therapy to Latinx. What is of importance that is overlooked? That also will be addressed, but that's a big question. I actually tend to ask my clients at the end of the first session, did I overlook anything? Is there anything of importance that I failed to ask, that I didn't do that yet? And sure enough, they always say, hey, you know what, actually, I didn't tell you that I lost a child 2 years ago, and that's what's impacting my marriage right now. And that's really important because for me, the identity is to become a mother. That's what's really come up cultural-wise. Asking what I failed to ask. So here it is, the good, the bad, the ugly. Challenges providing mental health services to Latinx clients. Here we go. The number one is the stigma of accessing or receiving mental health services in the Latinx community. So even this is really impressive in knowing. Latinx only came about the term a few years ago. The Spanish language is male dominated, so you'll have Latino for male, Latina for female, but there was nothing for anyone that chooses pronouns of they and them as a translation in Spanish. Thus, Latinx came. It's more inclusive than exclusive. So that's really important. I never assume either. Whenever I see an individual that says, oh, you know, such and such, I'll ask them, how do you identify? And if they say Latinx, I'll say, great, what are your pronouns of choice? Because that's leading me somewhere there. That's telling me, okay, is there something they want to explore there? Is there a transformation? Is there new life coming into them in their form of identification? Yeah. The stigma. This is the biggest challenge, I think. I literally have had individuals come into my office and I identify as a Latina, a hoodie, glasses, and they will tell their friends on the phone, oh, I'm just at the doctor's, or oh, I'm just at the store. Every week? That don't make sense, but that's okay. We'll talk about that later. There's so much shame. They can't tell their family. I was shamed in my family for going to therapy for 3 years. You don't spread our business. What's wrong with you? We're not crazy. Are you kidding me? You paid how much to talk to somebody? Pay me, I'll hear you. Like, let's chuckle here because these are things that we hear in our family, right? Over and over until they realize, like, oh, it's actually helping her. And then my sister started going, and then now me and my mom go, and she goes on her own. I had to bribe my mother. I literally would bribe her with a nanny, I promised her. I would take her to lunch, and like a kindergartner, her first 3 sessions, I took her to the lobby, and I waited because I wanted it that bad. And after, like a kindergartner, they said, it's okay, it's fine, I'll go now. I would drive an hour out to her and an hour back. That's how important it was. So the stigma is real, right? She still doesn't tell anybody in our family, but here we are. Limited resources. This goes back to the bottom one, lack of transportation availability. One of my clients really grew me as a human being and having empathy. As I was driving here, as I was turning the corner on the street, there was a woman that was really hurrying to cross the street because she saw me, and I thought, wow, she doesn't trust that I'll wait for her. And then she's catching the bus. One of my clients would take the bus to come see me to therapy for 90 minutes. One way. One day she was late. And I felt some kind of way because it was, of course, Christmas Eve, right? And everything's closed, but I'm there waiting for her. And then at the end of session, she told me, she goes, the bus was late and it's really crowded because they have less drivers today. And I didn't know. I didn't know that in the rain and the cold and the heat and everything, she was still committed. Changed my life. After that, I always asked, how did you arrive? I always just ask, how do you get here? Do you drive? Do you get picked up? Oh, okay, so you're having vision problems, you take an Uber. Do you have enough for that? And asking what resources does my community, my business, my center, my agency have for them? That is huge, asking questions day in, day out. This is big to them. You know, after that, she would always confirm with me. She'd be like, hi, Missy, I'll be there. Great. And even though she was older, out of respect in the culture, she would just say that to me, because my name is hard. So she'd just say Z. Yeah. Language barriers. This is huge. So this is also from experience. I had an Iranian family and the parents spoke Farsi only. I don't speak Farsi. So who was a little translator? My client. So I learned what works, what doesn't with language barriers. So what I did is this. There were certain things I didn't want the child having to translate because I felt it wasn't appropriate clinically, but also they're little. I didn't want that. So I downloaded Google Translate on my phone as the app, and then what I would do is I would take the mom separately outside the home, and then I would play it back for her. and then she would speak, and on another app, it would translate for me. And that's what I did. I used any resources technology-wise that I could to work with this mom. Or I would have her write down whatever it was, and then I would go to my clinician sister and have her help me translate whatever she wrote down in Farsi. And then as soon as it was done, I would shred it because it's information of a client. That's what I would do, whatever it took. That was my agency's motto. So additionally, we have racial issues. That will always be a thing and never ending, and I think it's this. A lot of people will like to bring up what's not going well, and this is what I like to do. I like to stay positive. I will ask, what is going well for you? To the client, I will literally ask, where do you feel at home? Where do you feel, what place, what person do you feel embraces your culture? Whatever it may be. And sometimes, oddly, I find, oh, I go to this little coffee shop, you know, it's not much, I have $2, I buy a coffee, but, you know, they speak my language of origin and it feels good. Asking them that. Additionally, it's systemic aggressions, assimilation, immigration. With the Latinx population, this is a hot topic right now, immigration. So this is what I'll touch on about it. Same thing, asking. What, setting the tone and saying just from the very beginning, hey, listen, I have nothing to do with ICE. The freezer does, not me. I'm just here to provide this service. I'm just here to get you well, to help you get well, because that's your responsibility. I'm not ICE. For curiosity to know what resources you need, would you feel open and welcome to sharing with me your immigration status if you need any resources? So it's kind of just tiptoeing in there, and if they're like, oh no, actually, can we skip? That's fine. It is what it is. Some agencies, some programs require that, right? Kind of like WorkSource or whatnot, if they're getting the treatment based on what they will receive for services for them and their children. That's one. Assimilation. It's very important to ask what generation the individual is. For example, a lot of children, they're first generation born here in the country. So they've had the privilege and pleasure of being educated in this country, where their parents might only have like a first, second grade education. They literally can only speak the language. They can't even read Spanish. They were never taught. So what I learned when I was working at my agency is that one of the moms, she just lagged it. Like she was late on filling out the paperwork, and I couldn't understand why. Because I had already given it to her in Spanish, but once again, me with, you know, my assumptions. And she broke down. She says, I can't read them. And I'm really embarrassed to tell you that. And then that's what we did. I used it as a collateral, and I went over the entire thing with her. I took that time, and that changed our relationship. That's the love and care that we take care of. So that's important to understand. Sometimes they just can't read it. Assimilation matters, the generations. Let's see here, microaggressions as well, of course it happens. Identification for Latinx individuals. This is huge too. For example, there's like this cultural rival that, quote unquote, Salvadorians don't like Mexicans, or Mexicans don't like Salvadorians, and we have better food than you do. It's a thing. So just ask, how do you identify? And if they're bicultural, that happens too within the Latinx community. Maybe mom is Salvadorian and mom is Mexican. So how does that play a part into your identity and treatment that we're having currently? Is that of importance for you? That's important to ask. Yes?
I was about the racial issues, one of the things that I find is people constantly make this assumption that being Latinx is a race.
Right.
And it's not a race.
Right.
You could be, I mean, I know a person who's Japanese and Latina.
That's right.
So there's this, it's like, it gets racialized as well, and so when we're thinking of Latino people as a race, we're missing all of this rich cultural, these rich cultural differences, and also racial differences within this amazing community.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important. Just ask, how do you self-identify and where are your ancestors from? Just to get a good base, right? And you're right. I actually had the pleasure of going to Peru, and there's a lot of individuals that migrated from Japan or Korea and settled in Peru. And generations down, they don't speak any of their ancestors' language. They straight speak Spanish, and that's it. That was interesting for me to see, and I was like, okay. And they identify as Peruvian. And they sing the national anthem, and they were raised there, and then that's their country of origin. Makes sense. So then we have the cost. This is a huge one, and I'm going to share this with you guys, all right? Let no one ever tell you when you are here, when you graduate, when you get licensed, and when you go into whatever field it is that you want to with your degree and your education and experience, that you are not worth any dime you place on yourself. And not a dime, may it be a beautiful $100 bill or more. This is why. I had the experience when I went and chose private practice of leaving my full-time employment with a good check that paid my bills, and it was the scariest thing to ever do, and go into private practice full-time, sink or swim. I had one of my leaders, see my face, leader, tell me, Z, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to go into private practice and I'm going to serve the Latinx population. They chuckled and they said, good luck paying your bills. Good luck with that. I'm thriving. I'm thriving. I have a wait list. It is not a problem to see individuals of color, of cultural components, or multicultural. It is whatever it is you want to serve and how well you market yourself. Every single one of you is worth whatever it is that you place on yourself. Know that. So why do I say that? Because here's what I do, all right? I'm going to share transparently with you guys, cost-wise. There's a big need for individuals that are licensed, unlicensed, well-equipped professionals of the mental health field to serve Latinx. I know this. It's a statistic, it's data, and it's true. Then I have bills. That's a reality too. And then there's this thing called a heart, conscience, and ethics, right? And then I leave that little 10% space for error. Here's my model and why I'm sharing it. For me to serve my community, 30% of every of my service that I do is at a low fee scale. Low, 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 okay? To where the woman that is cleaning houses, barely making ends meet, single mama, doesn't speak English, can come and see me, and she feels beautiful, and she feels empowered, and she feels better, okay? 30% I save for individuals who have insurance, but because I don't take insurance, I work with them. I say, okay, that doesn't work for you, what can you afford? I don't just go by and hang up, not at all. I ask, what can you afford? And I find resources for them. It's empowering your clients. Then the last column is the individuals that, whether or not they have insurance, they can afford that, but they get extra. So what does that mean? They get any type of trainings I do free of charge, any workbooks I make free of charge. So they're literally just growing alongside with my practice. And 10% is for that error of margin. What do I want to do? Do I want to donate this time? And I do pro bono. When the individuals were being taken away from their children, right? You guys remember that, the border separation? I felt some kind of way. Instead of ranting online or calling out names or getting into the political bubble, what I chose to do is action. Gandhi says if we want to see change in the world, we have to start with ourselves. So what did I do? I started the pro bono program through my private practice. I would see certain individuals that applied pro bono, no charge, until they felt better or until we saw clinically that they were functioning and no longer impaired to that capacity. That's what I did. I did change, and I'm encouraging you guys to do that within your own capacity for whoever your heart chooses to serve. So the cost there, it's still a thing, but you can do something about it. Give opportunities to others that might otherwise not be available. Availability of cultural component mental health provider. That's why we're all here, to learn a little more about this and what it takes, right? There we go. So here's evaluating data. I like music. Jay-Z, the rapper, says, men lie, women lie, but numbers don't. Facts. It doesn't. Numbers do not lie. So here's a reference at the bottom. But this study actually showed us that Latinos are the largest growing minority in the United States today. Because, I mean, just family's everything, and what can I say? Like, we have some kids, you know? Like, my mom's on me, like, when's the kids coming? They're coming. So, there are only 16% therapists of color in the United States. Chew on that for a minute. 16%. The first time I ever heard this, I was graduating from grad school. I walked out after class was over, and it hit me. I cried. Like, wow, that means that if I have any chance myself of reaching out and finding a culturally component therapist that might jive with me and actually get that, is slim to none, 16%. Yeah, it's a reality. Only a small percent of Latinx individuals access mental health services for the reasons we mentioned earlier. Lack of transportation, lack of resources, lack of language, fear of being deported. That's a huge one. That's why I said the only ice here is in the fridge, not me. Like, that's not my place. My place is to heal here, right? And just being transparent about the realities for them. Maybe that's their biggest concern, right? Am I going to make rent tomorrow? Am I going to be deported, or do I need this therapy session? Latinos are underserved with various services that impact mental health. So let's take aside the whole therapy component. What other services are they not getting that lead to them not getting therapy? Medical help. There's another really big one. Same thing, for fear of being deported, not having the money. A lot of them are not insured because they don't have documentation. Or here's what happened. There's this gap between people where they're not documented. Their children will receive government services, but they won't. So their children can go get therapy, but they can't. We all know when we see a child, who are we really working with here? The parents. So that's a big component. No matter how long you see the child and they're, doing as best as they can, if you don't address the issues and challenges going on with the parents or the higher level, right, of systems, there's not going to be much change there. So that's important to consider for the Latinx community. So clinical intervention used in treating Latinx clients. So these are just some, right? And I want to spend some time on this. Family systems. Anybody a fan? You don't have to be, but yeah. Great, we are fans. So family systems, what I like to do is definitely go into genograms. This is so great. Anybody play with genograms?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. Lots of stuff comes out, and this is what I really love. It's a visual. Latinx individuals love tangible things they can actually walk out with. And what I do is two separate things, right? What I will do is create it in there with them in their language that they choose. So this is what ends up happening in my own family sessions. The acculturation and assimilation levels will come out. The children will give me information in English, and then the parents will give me information in Spanish. And then I have to play this like Spanglish role here and kind of throw out like, okay, was it the Thea? Was it who? Was it, Jessica? And that's how I handle it. For somebody who is monolingual or English speaking only, you can also do that. It doesn't have to be you. It could be like, okay, what's her name? And they can write it down. You can include them in the process. The second layer to that genogram is for them, if they feel comfortable or open to it, is to take it home to anybody that wasn't present in the room to fill out information. A lot of clients I've seen over the years actually say, I had no idea I had an older sibling, and they died. Or other things come out, like, well, my mom immigrated to this country in 1997. I had no idea I actually have two siblings out in home country. They had no idea. And it just changes, and they say, wow, I can understand why mom maybe didn't want to attach to me because she didn't get to do that with her other children. Lots of things come out when we do genograms. Anybody in here familiar with the EVP IPT, interpersonal therapy? No. It's a great model. So here's the greatest tool that I took from IPT, interpersonal therapy. It's called the social support circle. Anybody familiar with it? Yeah. So what it is, it literally looks like one of those dart boards, where you throw the darts. There's this really big circle in the middle, and then the layers go out, right? So the way I use it with Latinx individuals is I ask them, so in the circle in the middle, I want you to write down the 7 closest people to you that you feel support. But I'm very careful to say not people, but also individuals, articles, entities. Reason I use entity is because a lot of Latinx individuals will bring up religion or spirituality. And a lot of them will even say like, mi perro, like my dog. Perfect, put Barry right there, put Sparky, whatever helps. Because at the end of the day, I just need all the tools I can get because it's heavy. There's layers of stuff. Some people say God, and they will put God in there and it's highlighted on my perfect because it's not about me in the room. Regardless of what my identity, my beliefs are, it's about them. We separate that, right? And if I can chime in and give them a pound and be like, great, I'm glad you feel supported, that's extra points. In the second circle, what we're going to put is people that are not as close to you. What would that look like? Would it be extended family? Would it be cousins? And sometimes when I do these, just a little note, okay, and it's kind of humorous, but not. You cannot do an 8x10 paper. You need like an 11x14 one of these, okay? Because Latino families are big. Like, they go big. There's so many. On the genogram, I need like 2, like one for mom and one for dad's side, right? So that's important to understand. And what I do to transport these, if any of you do home base, anybody do home base services? If ever you do that, what I do is I fold those up into an 8x10 and then I have them ready to go. And that way I just tape it up on the wall when I'm in the home, right? So the IPT on the third circle, what I do is I ask them, whose body is no longer working? Because I also won't say death. Because in the Latino culture, some of them just think they transition. I don't assume, I just say whose body is no longer working or who you're no longer with. that you would have liked to have support from. And that's huge. Sometimes a lot of female Latinas will put their child that is no longer living, the child that was lost, the child that was taken from them when they were migrating to this country. A lot of them are separated and they never find their children again. So that's a big thing, just to know there's tons of tools and it's free. Take a piece of paper and write down your circles, right? And if any of you need an example of what this looks like, please feel free to email me. So for the genogram, it's also important that I'm colorful because the Latino culture is very colorful, as you know. Like if you look at Cinco de Mayo, Dia de los Muertos, there's tons of beautiful colors. So I go ham on my Sharpies. I go green, pink, purple, gray, and then I'll assign colors. I will make them team blue or team red. Red is conflict, then I'll draw out the red, right? Or the blue, I'll draw a little heart to show good connection or good bond, good attachment. That way if they can't read, what are they able to do? Associate and visualize. Oh, okay, we're good, yeah. And then some of them will laugh in session and be like, we're not good, like, we're still fighting. And then they'll put green, it's neutral, right? But it's important to know what can I do for these clients that is available to them. Narrative therapy. I love this one. I personally come from the understanding, for me, once again, you can agree or disagree, but I don't believe in an alcoholic. I believe in there's an individual and then there's alcohol. And what I'll do in session is I'll have the Latinx individual or the entire family sit there, and we're all here because dad has a little too many to drink around Christmas time. And the holidays are coming. So alcohol will sit right here and we'll just give it to alcohol. Okay, talk to alcohol, what's going on? From the little one all the way to the grandma, they're mad, some are crying, some are like, I don't care. They're just always there, they bother me. And it's so interesting that they're much more willing to talk to that entity than they are dad in the corner just like, dang. And that's tough. The very thing I do when they walk into the room and that's the issue, is I tell dad from the very beginning, this is not a man-hating club here. That's not what we're doing right now. This is just you supporting your family, your kids, and such forth. What we're gonna do is this work. It's not about you today. And they walk out and I always check in with them. And I say, hey, how did that feel? And they go, I just never realized it. Actually, alcohol visited my father a lot like he visits me. And they'll narrate it in the same way. I love narrative therapy because for that one moment, it takes the heat out of the kitchen. And it allows you to work enough to where you get in there. And then when you do feel ready and they're strong enough emotionally, then you can go into the real stuff, right? In whatever modality you choose. But that's how I use it with Latinx individuals, the narrative therapy. Or I'll also say, okay, Mom, it seems like the issue here is that your child is just, according to you, lazy. They don't do anything. They don't clean their room. They don't do their homework. What possibly could be the problem? You know, is the family shaming you? Is the family saying that you're not raising them right? They're like, oh, I'm hearing it from here to Sunday from my sisters that I'm not doing a good job or whatnot. So what I'll do is I'll ask Mom to imagine a table like this. And I will ask, who sits at her table? Is it shame? Is it sadness? Is it happiness? Who has the seat next to her? Who? Who has that special spot? Is it happiness or sadness? Does happiness knock on her door and she says, get out, this ain't for you here, happiness doesn't visit us? And they'll just tear up. Because the table and the family dinner is so essential to the culture. I hit it right with examples. I say, okay, what's on the table? What'd you cook? And she gets super excited. Oh, I cooked tamales and I made tacos and my babies loved it. And then I'll go back and forth in between something positive to still keep them okay. And then I'll say, okay, well, who's eating this? Who is the unhealthy, uninvited guest in your home that you don't want? And they'll come out and they say, shame. I'm tired of shame visiting me. So that's what I'll do. Have any of you ever heard the term personification? Right, giving them life when those entities or subjects don't have human qualities? That's exactly what narrative therapy can do. So that's how I use it with Latinx individuals. I'll use culturally appropriate examples and go from there. In regards to CBT, CBT is pretty straightforward, as well as trauma-focused CBT. This is what I will say. Who in here has done the online training for trauma-focused CBT? Yes, you will need that with every single multicultural client that you will have. This is really important. There's a spot on the training that they have to alter or use accordingly. So I'll share this, and this is not me on my soapbox, but just in consideration. I always think of where something originates from or where it was made. What do I mean? I'm fully aware that there wasn't any Latinos that were at the round table when CBT or TFCBT was created. That's just a reality. So I know that there's wonderful, yummy, great parts of this EBP that is wonderful, and we need to use accordingly for the client you're using it with. There might be an activity that's too high cognitively that might not work for that client because they didn't have the opportunity to go to school or to learn to read and write. CBT, a lot of exercises that I've seen on Sideways is for them to be journaling. If they don't even know how to write or they struggle with it, how are they going to do that? So we use accordingly. So in one of the systems that I had to get certified for, I had a client that had second grade education, not in this country. So then I was like, okay, I got this. So what did we do? We had her voice memo, her feelings every single day, and then that's what she would bring into session. And she did it on her phone. Her children would help her. So she would say like, oh, Mijo, just help me push this. And then they'd push it for her, and then she'd do it. But she did the homework. That's what matters, right? Another one is downward arrow. Anybody familiar with that technique from CBT? Yeah, that's another one that I personally really struggled with using with these clients. But when I was getting certified, they're like, you have to use it. And I would go back to my supervisor that didn't speak Spanish or wasn't Latinx and say, I need some help here, I'm drowning. So I would literally have to consult with my colleagues that were Latinx and say, what are you using, what do you do? And they would explain to me that what they would do is more of a verbal narrative. It wasn't so much of writing down like what thoughts led to this or spiraling. It's more of a verbal communication. So I'll say this, for a lot of Latinos, where the cultural components come from is a mix of like the Spanish influence and the indigenous. And you mix that all together in all kinds of percentages, and that's what you get, right? In the indigenous cultures for American Indian, we all know that their main source is by speaking the knowledge from one to another. That's something that I actually really recommend when using these. Do it verbal versus writing if it's not appropriate for the client. By any means necessary, try it, and it is possible. They're great EBPs. Trauma-focused CBT, same thing. It's very, very forward. The one thing consider for Latinx is that if you are using the model, if I'm correct, has 13 components. I don't know if it's changed, but trauma-focused CBT has certain components that you'll work through, and the client is supposed to just magically get better, like in these amount of weeks. That's the case when there's less complex trauma. Sometimes when you receive these individuals in your agency or wherever you're seeing them, it's like an onion. It's literally like, where do I start? There's so much going on, so you really have to pick and choose your battles. And here's what I do. When I first see them and I see there's a lot going on, I'll literally take inventory. I'll say, okay, wait a minute. So you lost a child when you were 21, and then your partner would beat you to the pulp for 3 years. And then you migrated to this country and you got deported 3 times, and then here you ended up doing this and this to feed your children, and then DCFS came in and took your kids. Among all of that we have, what is of utmost importance that is bothering you, triggering you, or doesn't let you work? That is really important to ask, because we're doing what? We're helping the impairments and functioning, right? Like, what is going on there? And when they tell me, sometimes it doesn't match what my agency told me. So I'll have to pick and choose, what do I want to address first? And sometimes the components, you will literally stay in that one for a while. One that really comes to mind is maybe like component 6, where it's the narrative that they have about the story. And then they're going to share it with someone else later. Once again, going back to narrative. Sometimes they'll use victim versus survivor. And that's just something that you got to rock with them with. Choose your battles wisely on this one. EBPs, limitations apply as we've been speaking about, right? This is important to consider because not all EBPs are appropriate for this population. A lot of the books also are translated into Spanish. One is Seeking Safety. Anybody familiar with Seeking Safety? Mm-hmm. Great book. I love it. I'm a huge fan. And I'll share with you that 30% of that is mistranslated. If I gave it to somebody who spoke Spanish, it's in Castellano, which is Spanish from Spain. They're not going to understand it because that's not their language of origin. So then what did I have to do? I had to do the work and actually read it out to them and like, so this is what this means, and break it down. It's a lot of work. And if that didn't work, then I was just left with verbally doing what I could. Take a bite of the pie as much as you can. That's all it is. Do what you can and be willing. Well-maintained supervision. This is huge beyond. I will share this. I had the beautiful experience while having a caseload of probably like 21 Latinx individuals with multiple layers of trauma. And I had an amazing supervisor. He was not Latinx, he did not speak Spanish, and he was there for me. He would ask questions like I asked you. Z, how can I further support you in this moment? It seems like this is really heavy for you. Are you doing all right? And I would just feel so supported. At the very beginning, before him, I had a supervisor that was not that great. To the point where they would be on Facebook during supervision.
Oh my.
That's right. And I kid you not. But here's the thing, I'll share with you. I am so grateful that I had that experience because it empowered me to learn how to advocate for myself, know what works and what doesn't, know when a supervisor is straight checked out, jaded, doesn't want to do the work. Another thing I really learned is energy does not lie. No matter how much I wanted to lie to myself, I knew that when he was in the room, he was present. He would put away all things and say, okay, I'm here for you. Hazy, I didn't understand a lick of what you wrote down for that client right there because we have to quote for some of these EVPs word for word. He's like, but can you help me with that? He was open and he was curious and he was there for me. I can't explain how important that is. He was on it every single week. Z, let's sign your hours. Doesn't matter, every single week. That is well supervised, maintained. Yes?
I'm embarrassed to ask, but I'm going to ask, what does EVP stand for?
Evidence-based practices.
Oh, evidence-based
Thank
practice.
you. Yes,
Sorry,
yes, you're right. I should write that out. No, I agree. Yeah, it's just there's so many acronyms that I'd be here all day. Just kind of, yeah. And I come from DMH. So out of school, I went to DMH, and I literally would, like, after a while, I was like a robot. I was like, mo, fa, bro, like, no full words. Like, what? And I'm like, oh, mother. Yeah. So our reports were about, anybody familiar with, like, DMH culture? Whew. If you can last a year in DMH, you're a champ. You can last anywhere. The average burnout, the average person, I saw clinicians come in 3 months and bounce. And those that made it were champs. And we just look at each other like in battle, like, yep. Our caseloads were beyond heavy because we're bilingual at Latinx. My caseload was always top 21, 22, full time. We were underpaid and overworked, and I still loved the work. I was still wanting to do it, to drive to my client's house, see women who were selling their bodies in the centers they were at, empowering them, seeing how can I help them. Their children taken away, DCFS calls. I was friends with social workers after that. I called them so much. So collaboration and collaterals are really big too, I'll share with you. Under supervision, these are some key things that you should look for. Is your supervisor giving you resources that you have or not had before? What does that mean? If you have a client that is lacking something, have you thought of all options? And if not, does your supervisor have something? My prayer is that they are growing you along your journey. And there's a lot of supervisors that won't do it. They'll just be like, oh, well, okay, that's where we're at. See you next week. Advocate for yourself. The collaterals are also very important when you're seeing minors or individuals where another family member is open to it. In my own practice, if I'm seeing an adult and a lot of the dysfunction or impairments are based on another individual, when it's time in session, I'll ask them if they're okay with them being a guest. Not permanently, but just as a guest to empower them and see like what else can we gather of resources. What would that look like? I'm seeing a female Latina between the ages of 30 and 40, and a large part of her dysfunction and impairments has to do with a partner that is not as supportive as she needs. So during that time, when we've already built a relationship, I bring their partner into session and I ask them, how can we further support my client? Like, how can we support them, right? It's not about the couple, because this is not couples therapy. I make it very clear. What do they need? I told them, like, let's just hire a nanny. Let's just hire someone who cleans the house. And there it was. And she said, well, I don't want to do that. My mom's going to shame me. I should be cleaning my house. I should be taking care of my kids. And there it was. Then I knew he did offer resources and options. She just didn't take it. And then that's a whole other conversation about getting through the shame with her culturally about I don't clean my house and I don't take care of my kids. So that's how I gathered information I wouldn't have had otherwise. Just an example. So skills for working with Latinx as a mental health professional. So here are some key components that over the time of looking at research and just experience and gathering data from others of what's helped. And this is particularly for clinicians that are not of Latinx descent. So what helps? Just awareness, what you guys are doing right now, like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, let me write that down up here, right? Understanding what could be the challenges associated with serving this population. Openness, just being open to the challenge. I don't know if you guys have ever done anything in your life where you're like, it's probably a bad idea. It's perfect, I'm gonna do it. That's sometimes the feeling, and yeah, and like, right, like that second cupcake, not a good idea, but you did it, and you're like, oh, it was like it was everything. I'm so glad I got the chocolate and the vanilla. Yes. So it's I'm just being humorous here, but it's being open. Like, are you open to that challenge? Grit is so important to have when you're serving the Latinx population. Curiosity. I love to say that I'm curious about humans. Just in general. If there's never a day that goes by that I'm just like, I thought I heard it all. I thought I heard it all, but that's not the case, right? When you treat humans and they're just in the room with you, if there could be a fly on the wall, they'd make millions, right? You guys ever heard of the accounts of Overheard in LA?
Yeah.
Right? I would die, like, of course, I can't, but to do one, like, Overheard in session. Like, that would be great. And that's what I mean, just by, like, curiosity of humans. Like, what am I gaining here? What am I learning?